This is Alaska Quilisi, March 29th, near midnight, with Govinda, Wind, Thunder. You ready?
I am ready.
Okay, good. All right, let's start. Where were you born?
I was born in Rochester, New York in 1977 in a little apartment above Pizza World.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did your family come to California?
We came piecemeal, I guess. My brother came when I was 8. And I came 5 years ago. And my mom came last summer.
Where were your parents born?
My mom was born in Rochester, New York. I don't know where my dad was born.
Do you speak with your dad?
No.
No. Is your mom here now?
My mom is here, yeah. She lives in Berkeley.
She lives in Berkeley. And where do you live?
I live, I'm kind of homeless right now.
Mm-hmm.
I live between her love seat and a couple other couches.
Yeah, okay. All right. Can you tell me about your name? What's the story with your name?
Yeah, my mom made it up. Well, my mom and dad made it up. It's Ahimsa Govinda Aniruddha Wind Thunder.
Say it again.
Ahimsa Govinda Aniruddha Wind Thunder. Ahimsa means do no harm or harmless in Hindu, Sanskrit, something like that. Govinda is a Hindu god. Aniruddha is a different Hindu god. And Wind Thunder are the two triglyphs of the I Ching they threw on the day I was born.
The what? Explain that.
It's a Chinese fortune telling. It's elemental, and they threw wind and thunder.
So, Wind Thunder is not your parents' last name.
No.
So they gave you a full legal name, and your last name is not the same as theirs? How interesting.
Hippies. Super hippies.
So why Govinda, not Ahimsa?
Well, because my mom said Ahimsa was my secret name. That only my family should know. And that my first name was Govinda. So that's what I've always gone by.
Did your parents go to college?
I know my mom did. She went when I was like 6. She started going to school. Maybe, 6 or so. To become a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about my father.
Is she still a teacher?
No, she just retired. That's how she moved out here. She was a teacher in Rochester, New York until last school year ended.
Mm-hmm.
And then she retired and came out here to be with her kids.
And what was your education like?
On and off. I almost have a bachelor degree. I went to 3 different colleges. Went music school, double bass, classical performance. Did my senior recital and dropped out 3 credits shy of graduating. And kind of think maybe I'll go back and take Spanish 201, but probably not. Given that my degree is in music, it kind of doesn't matter if I have it or not.
And before you went to college, did you go to public schools?
I went to a lot of different schools. I went to public schools all except for 2 years when I was in Catholic school. From 7th and 8th grade. But we were Muslim while I was in Catholic school. We're not Muslim anymore, though.
Your grandmother it has spoken about you to press people and in Occupy. Does she
I
live
think
in
that's
Oakland?
my mom.
Oh, was that your mom? They said she was your grandmother. Why did they say that?
My grandmother's been dead for like a long time. I think
my.
they're talking about my mother.
Okay, well, we'll come back to the press. Goodness. Would you say that your family is political?
No. Maybe. Maybe. My mom was kind of activist-ish in the early 80s. Now she votes. My brother votes. But that's about it. But we're all Occupy supporters in different ways.
Does your family have a history of being involved in protest movements? You said that your mom was an activist in the 80s. What was she involved in?
I'm not really sure what she was involved in. Honestly, I remember she like protested some stuff, but I was so young when it was happening. I don't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't really discussed it. So I don't know.
Okay.
I honestly don't know. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Okay. Occupy Wall Street started in September of last year in New York. Is that when you became aware of it?
Not immediately. Like, I didn't jump on board right away. I vaguely heard about it. I'm not very news conscious. I don't like watch the news or know what's going on. I heard it was going on. I heard there was an Occupy Oakland. I thought that's kind of cool, but I didn't really know what was up with it. I stopped by Occupy Oakland and like saw it and thought it was cool and saw them like feeding homeless people and just kind of setting up a tent village in the park. But I was working like, at that point I was a full-timer at Trader Joe. I was working 50 hours a week on a rotating schedule. And I wasn't like taking part in protests. I thought it was cool what they were doing, but I wasn't going to be there. Mm-hmm. And I'd say I finally got involved right after they got kicked out. Because it was happening in my neighborhood. I think it was October 17th. I mean, it was really happening in my neighborhood. I'm at 25th in San Pablo, and they're at like 16th in San Pablo. Maybe 9 blocks. So I'd see them, but I didn't really care. Then that whole night blows up where they tear gas everybody, and Scott Olson gets hurt. I think that's October 17th. And I was walking home from Merchant's Bar, which is a bar over by Jack London Square, and I was kind of drunk. And I walked right into the middle of that scene with Scott Olson getting hurt and tear gas going off everywhere. And I realized the police had kicked them out of the park. And I stayed to watch. And the police were just being horrible. Shooting into the crowd. Just, it was a horrible thing to walk into, and I stayed all night. And then I went home and slept, and I met them at the library the next day. I think it was, I don't remember what time it was, but we met at the library and we walked and we ripped down the fences and went back into the plaza. And that's when I got involved with it. In the re-setup after the initial teardown.
And how would you describe as you sort of got to know them, you stayed there and you watched that night, and then as you're walking, you sort of get to know people who are organizing, I would think. What's your first response to the movement?
I didn't know anybody. I didn't want to really talk to anybody. They looked like a bunch of hipsters. They looked like a bunch of stupid hipster Oakland kids, and I didn't really want to talk to them, but I felt like I had a right to be there. Because it was my protest too, and they could fuck off if they wanted to own it. Kind of how I felt. So I just started showing up, and I never spoke to anybody. And I rarely went to their meetings. And if I did, I sat there quiet because I didn't want to debate with a bunch of stupid hipsters.
So what made it your protest?
It's everybody's protest, right? It's the 99%. Which means I have as much right to be there as anybody else. I grew up fuck poor. On welfare. Collecting government cheese. And now I have $70,000 in student loan debt, and I'll never pay it off. And I work at a shitty grocery store. It's my fucking protest. I have a right to be there. Ain't gonna let the hipsters box me out of it.
So the first large after the night that Scott Olson got hurt that you were talking about, the first largely organized Occupy Oakland event after that was the march to the Port of Oakland.
Yeah.
And that was in November.
November 2nd.
Did you participate in that?
I did. I was there at 8 in the morning. Well, that night, the night we broke into the fences, that was my first GA, and we voted during that GA to conduct November 2nd. And I showed up on November 2nd at 8 in the morning. It was the best day ever. It was like we were winning, and everybody showed up. It's the most people I'd ever seen in my life. I started out conducting traffic because the police hadn't shown up to shut down the streets, and we were getting these major traffic jams. So I just sat down in the middle of the street and started turning cars around like it was Tiananmen Square or something. And some people were getting really pissed at me, but other people were just turning. And I went down there with my mom. And it was just great. It was me and my mom, and we were taking pictures and putting them up on Facebook. And Oakland was shut down. There were so many people there. It was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever seen. We marched all the way to the bottom of the lake, shut down banks over there, marched everywhere that day. And everywhere we went, the police were backing down because of the Scott Olson thing. They were scared to engage us, and we were doing whatever we wanted. Just masses of people, and then we all converged at the port. There was a 4 o'clock march, a 5 o'clock march. And that's not even it. There were other marches. There were marches from West Oakland BART that I don't even know about. And yeah, it was a pretty impressive day to be a part of. You felt like you were making history that day.
So then, about a week later, the occupation began in earnest at UC Berkeley on November 9th. Did you spend any time at Occupy Cal?
I didn't. I responded one day, and I don't know the date. I got a text message, because we get text message alerts from Occupy Oakland where to show up. And there was this announcement that Sproul Plaza had been attacked and that students had been injured and arrests were imminent and that we should all show up at UC Berkeley. So I called my mom and tried to convince her to go with me, and she said no, it was too late at night. So I showed up at Sproul Plaza the night after the police shut down. I guess they were hitting students with batons. I showed up that night after and confronted the police on the stairs, and as was my tradition, I usually get right up in the police's faces because I'm big, and if someone has to be there, it should probably be me. So I went up on the steps of whatever building they were trying to keep us off of. I'm not sure what the building was. I think it was across from the library, though. And it was all OPD. It was all Oakland police officers on the stairs. It wasn't Berkeley police. It wasn't campus police. It was OPD. And I can't remember the guy's name. He has an Irish name. But he was standing right in front of me, and I kept taking his picture and saying like stupid shit to him. Like I was angry and saying mean shit, but just like how he was wasting his life and stuff, and how he was pointless. And
the officer.
Yeah, I was putting him down, and then he called me by name. He said, "Govinda, I know you live on 25th Street. We know you." And then I moved. Like I moved in the crowd away from him. But that's the guy who took me to jail.
Get there. So, after the port shut down, and while the encampment is growing and then being broken apart at UC Berkeley, the Oakland encampment continues to grow for another several weeks in the plaza outside of City Hall.
Yeah.
Did you spend time there?
Yeah, that's when I never spent the night. I lived close enough that I would rather go home to my bed. And I don't own any tents or anything. And if I did, I wouldn't want them being ripped up by the police. But I started swinging by. I still never went to GAs. I always worked during them. And during November, I changed my job. Became not so... no longer on a rotating schedule, no longer management. And I was no longer commuting to Castro Valley for work. I could stay in Oakland, so I did have more time. I would go down there. I would often bring like bottles of whiskey after I got out of work at 11 and drink it in the plaza with the homeless occupiers. Like we hit a point there where we didn't have so much of an encampment anymore. I'm not sure if I'm talking about the same time you're talking about right now, though. My memory...
I would say the build-up between... I'm talking about pretty much any time between
before
November
they
and
tear
like
it down
December.
again?
Before the teardown, yeah. The build-up before the teardown.
I'm fuzzy about that time. I was definitely down there. Yeah. There were a lot of tents. I remember it feeling really good. We would... I guess I was going to GAs. There were meetings in the bowl there in front of City Hall. Mm-hmm. Maybe I didn't know they were GAs yet. I was going to meetings, but not like little committee meetings. And I've never spoken lingo until recently. Like, I didn't speak to people enough to know that it was called GA. But I was going to meetings down there, and I wasn't really meeting anybody. That was because I don't really meet people. And I still thought they were a bunch of hipsters.
How did you know the difference between you said that you were out there drinking with the homeless occupiers. How did you know the difference between people who were homeless and camping and occupiers who were camping? What's the difference?
Well, I mean, there isn't one, is there? Some people are choosing it, and other people are stuck with it. So that's the difference. And you can tell. They might not tell you, but you can kind of tell if someone's destitute on the street. But the fact that they're choosing to be there, if this is my movement too, it sure as hell is their movement. So might as well bring them down some whiskey to drink.
What was all at the same time, Occupy SF is heating up, Occupy Cal is heating up and being broken apart, but it's really high energy. Occupy Oakland is growing and becoming more organized. What are your impressions of the three occupations during that time? And are you relating, follow-up, are you relating with all three of them or staying put someplace?
I identify with Occupy Oakland. That's my neighborhood. My neighborhood is in solidarity with all other neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. But I was an Oaklander. I'd come help Berkeley. I'd go help San Francisco. But I was fighting my fight in Oakland. I think that's the way it's supposed to be. Like, we're supposed to help each other out, but I can't fight for your neighborhood for you, you know? But now I'm, like, still identifying with Occupy Oakland, and I don't live in Oakland. Because that was my neighborhood. I don't know if I answered the question.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, of course. All right, so towards the end of that period, around the end of December, the media started to show a lot of violence in these protests. They started sort of focusing on that. Is it your experience that there is significant violence? And when there has been violence at the protests, has that affected your involvement or your opinion of Occupy?
The media is definitely focusing on violence and as a much larger issue than it actually is. I have been at almost every major action, and I've seen very little violence on our behalf against them, and I've seen a lot of violence on their behalf against us. The media is focusing on little things. Things that may or may not have happened. There is violence coming from us. I don't want to lie. Like, we are throwing things at them. If they tear gas us, it's always thrown right back in their face. There are people who are throwing things at the police. Paint. There are black infiltrators. It's ridiculous. There's so much going on. And there is violence on our behalf, but it is so overshadowed by police violence. And the media turned against us after November 2nd. And it was like they made a decision. It was like they were told to do it. That's how it felt. Because as much good as we do now, we are only ever talked about in negative light. And things haven't changed that much. That's my answer.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a follow-up too. You use the phrase black bloc infiltrators. Can you tell me about that?
Well, November 2nd is the best thing we had going. And, that was the best day of my life, probably, November 2nd. And that night ended so poorly. We were honestly winning. We had shut the port of Oakland down. We had shut the entire city of Oakland down for an entire day. And then night fell, and there was a confrontation with the police in the streets. And we were standing our ground, and they weren't doing anything to us. They weren't tear gassing us. They weren't being the aggressors. And there was this group of people who I had never seen before. Obviously, there were a lot of people I'd never seen before. But I had kind of seen the usual Occupy Oakland people. I knew who was involved. There aren't that many of them that you don't know the regulars. And there was this other fringe group that was all wearing hoods and face masks, black bandanas over their face, dressed like you see, when the G8 summit happens and they call them the anarchists. There were people dressed like that, dressed just like that, who started smashing downtown Oakland and spray painting everything. They lit a dumpster on fire in the middle of the street. And the police weren't even doing anything to us at that point. We just got out of hand and we attacked. We made them do it to us that night. But it wasn't us. It was these other people that I'd never seen before. So I call them black bloc infiltrators. That's what the media told me to call them. But I don't know who the hell they were. Maybe they were angry Oakland youth who decided to skip school. I don't know who the hell it was, though. And it wasn't people I'd seen before down there. And they were acting in ways that Occupy Oakland never acts. Someone brought a fire extinguisher to put the dumpster fire out. And this guy, dressed up like a ninja, punched the other guy inside the head, knocked him on the ground, and ran off. To keep him from putting the dumpster fire out so the cops would keep hitting us. And the cops really fucked us up that night. That was the second time I got tear gassed. And it was our fault. We deserved it. That night we asked for it. We had gotten away with such a beautiful day. And then we want to trash your city.
Mm-hmm. So you said that you believed that you were specifically being monitored by police agencies during your involvement with Occupy over the course of these 3 months leading up to January 28th, right, the J28. Can you tell me about that and why you think that you were being singled out?
I don't specifically think I was singled out. I think that officer who recognized me and knew me from the block I was on, and that was probably his block, because I lived at 25th and San Pablo, which is a really nasty block in West Oakland. So I think they probably recognized me from home because they had a strong enough presence on my block. And I was the one white guy.
And can I also add that you're 6'6"?
Yeah, I'm 6'6" with crazy hair, keeping crazy hours, and in order to be that guy on that block, you have to act kind of crazy around the gangsters so they don't touch you. So I was a presence on that block for sure. And I feel like they probably knew me from there. Although that's just where I was stuck living because I had horrible credit and a 70-pound dog. And no one in Berkeley wants to touch someone with horrible credit and a 70-pound dog. So you move to West Oakland. And then you gotta be hard with the gangsters. But the cop knew who I was, but I don't think it was because they were monitoring me. And I might be being naive.
So you think, and you're referring to the cop when you responded to the text to come as an occupier in Oakland, you responded to a text to come and defend the violence that was happening at Occupy Berkeley.
Yes. And I think his name's O'Connor. I think his name is O'Connor, but I'm not sure. It's O something. O apostrophe something. But yeah, that's who I'm referring to. The guy who called me out by name and told me what block I live on.
So, of the literally hundreds of protesters who have been arrested in Oakland, some 300, nearly 400 people on January 28th, your case is one of the best documented and the most controversial. So can you walk us through what happened on January 28th?
Yeah. Yes, I can. I was really involved with Occupy by the end of January. I still wasn't going to meetings, but I was going to every action. Every single action. Within driving distance of Oakland. But on January 28th, I picked my mom up. We drove downtown. We looked for free parking. We found it over on Martin Luther King, way down near 880. My mom walks really slow. We went and got pizza. And then we showed up. I think it was supposed to start at noon. I don't remember though. I think it started at noon. We showed up at Franco Gaba Plaza, Oscar Grant Plaza. And right when we get there, there is this older black gentleman being escorted away by 16 riot police in handcuffs. And that's when I leave my mom, because I'm the in-your-face police kind of guy. And my mom's the old hippie lady at the back of the crowd holding up the peace sign. So I chase down these riot cops with this whole crowd of people, and we surround them, and we're screaming, "Let him go! Let him go!" And they're losing control of the crowd, and their boss comes and tells them to retreat. And they beat this one girl senseless with a billy club right before they retreat. They just start whacking her in the face. Overhand hitting her in the face with a billy club. And
why?
Because she wasn't letting them get through. We had them surrounded and they were trying to retreat. So they just attacked the weakest link in the circle. And they run away with this one dude who I saw in jail later that night. I didn't get to talk to him though, but they did arrest him. But they also ran the fuck away. They tried to, for a minute, create a presence in front of City Hall. And we chased them across the street in front of City Hall, and we kept them surrounded. And then their boss really got on them and told them to get the fuck away. And they ran, literally jogged off to the city center. It's this plaza thing. They went around a corner into a plaza where they couldn't be seen anymore. And the crowd started to grow. We were running a little bit behind. It was supposed to be a festival. It was the Move-In Day Festival. There was this really boring speaker. She was not getting the crowd amped up at all. So me and my mom were walking around. We sat on the edge of the plaza. They were putting up all these little mini teepees, like miniature tents, to be like, we still have an encampment here. But they were like maybe 6 inches tall. This lady walks by with bandanas cut out, and she's like, we are likely to get tear gas today. Would you guys like bandanas? And my mom said no, and I said no. And then I said, you know what, I get tear gas a lot, just give me one. But they were cut out black bandanas. They were like cut up black sheets. And I felt uncomfortable with the idea of wrapping my face like the people who had screwed up November 2nd so royally. So what I did is I tied it over my head like a handkerchief over your head. Thought I would just be able to hold it over my face if we got tear gassed. Eventually we had to wait way too long while the crowd grew because there weren't that many people. Not that many showed up right away. And eventually we moved out into the street, and my mom was really uncomfortable with it. She said the crowd's attitude was too violent, that it didn't have that peaceful feel that she remembered from November 2nd. And she was right. There is a different vibe going on. We're angry now. We've been tear gassed so many times, and it's getting so ridiculous for what little bit we're doing. We're breaking park rules, and we're getting tear gassed while other people are murdering people, and nothing's happening. And so we go out into the street, and it's festival like it is. Like there's only maybe 1,000 of us. We're covering from like 12th Street to 14th or 15th Street on Broadway, with a little turn in towards the plaza. There's a bus at the rear of us and a sound truck at the front of us. And the sound truck's playing loud music to like pump us all up. And the soundtrack wasn't there yet, sorry. I was wrong. The soundtrack's around the corner, but it's been pulled over by the police. That's what happened. I haven't thought about this day in this kind of detail in a long time. Alright, the soundtrack gets pulled over by the police before it even gets to protest. And that's when all hell starts breaking loose. The planning just isn't there. There's nobody in charge. And we're standing in the middle of the street. And we know the soundtrack has been pulled over like 1 block north and 2 blocks. One block east and 2 blocks south of where we are.
How did you know that?
Because they announced it from the other soundtrack. I forgot about that other thing. They had a mobile sound unit parked in the plaza, which is making announcements. And then people are running around doing mic checks. So the whole crowd knows where it is, but the whole crowd doesn't know where they're going. We split up in 2 factions heading in 2 different directions. And the whole thing's like clusterfuck. Like, who do I follow? And half the crowd's going one way and half the crowd's going another way. But eventually we all end up at the soundtrack. And it's there. And we don't see any police. Like, there's no evidence that they got pulled over. But they're just playing music in the middle of the street. And we're following it. I don't even know where we're going. I don't know we're going to the Kaiser building to break into it. And if I did know, I wouldn't know what the Kaiser building was. I just knew we were going to some building.
Let me ask you something. Before you got there, J28 was called Move-In Day.
Yeah, I knew we were breaking in somewhere. And I understood the possible ramifications of what that could look like because San Francisco had moved into a hotel on January 20th. And there had been a massive action with the police and a lot of arrests. So move-in day was kind of already a far-fetched reality because we already knew how they were going to react from having watched what happened in San Francisco. But OPD was on our shit. And they've been on our shit since December 30th. We've on December 30th and I think 31st, we marched on the jail because we had people in jail from November 2nd. And they made more arrests. And those marches evolved into the Fuck the Police marches every Saturday in Oakland. Sorry, I'm devolving a little bit.
It's fine. It's fine.
But,
so let me take you back to the
Yeah,
two crowds. The two crowds converge on the soundtrack.
And then we're following the soundtrack. And we've got like this tour bus at the back. And it's different than the bus we had 8 days before in San Francisco. We had this awesome bus in San Francisco that was like just driving through downtown's financial district, San Francisco, with all these Occupy Oakland banners and people just leaning off it, riding on top of it, shutting down all of San Francisco. But we had a different bus because our buses always get impounded every time we use them. So we had a new bus, and I'm walking with my mom. She can't walk too good. She's 65. But we're following, and the music's really loud at the soundtrack, so she's lagging back. So we're kind of towards the back of the march, and the soundtrack at the front makes an announcement the police are attacking the back of our line and trying to cut our tour bus off from the group, and that people need to go surround the bus to keep it with the march. And that's how I got sidetracked. OPD has not been messing around with us since we started the Fuck the Police marches. They are not happy campers. And they were not being happy campers that day. They already had the sound bus by the time we got that announcement. And my mom was like, you know what, this is not going to end good, I'm leaving. And I was like, okay, you get out of here. I'm staying, I'm going to go protect that bus. And we went our separate ways, and I ran to the back of the line. I don't know what street we were on, I think we might have been on Oak Street. But I'm not positive. We're turning on our way towards Laney College, running parallel to the numbered streets. And a line of riot cops caught up behind us. And at the back of us was the Children's Village, pushing strollers, moms pushing strollers, and there were riot cops pushing the moms along who were pushing strollers. So like me and two other people stood between the line of riot cops and the children in strollers and tried to stall the riot cops without getting arrested. And it wasn't working too good, and there were ice cream men selling ice cream to the kids. And the cops caught up with the ice cream man where the kids were and pushed the ice cream man's car over on the sidewalk, on like a lawn or something, and threatened to arrest him for selling ice cream to the kids. And they were chasing us from behind, from the front, from every side, and there was no way out. We were surrounded. And they meant business. They weren't letting us go. From that point, we haven't even hit Laney College yet. So we're going around, I guess, the west side of the Kaiser building. coming up towards Laney College, about to make a left right into the Kaiser building from that side, and they have us absolutely surrounded. And our sound truck can't move anywhere, and the bus has already been cut off. Assumably arrested. I don't know what happened to them. I never found out actually what happened to them, but the sound truck can't move anymore. There's lines of riot cops on all sides of us, except one sidewalk that leads into Laney College. And the whole march just abandons the sound truck, which was our guidance. They were the ones telling us which way to go. And they're no longer with us.
Were there any dispersal orders?
Not yet, but there were. At this point, they're just chasing us, and we're just running because we either have to run into them or we have to go into Laney College. They have us on all three sides. And we run into Laney College.
How many people did you say?
Roughly 1,000. But it was kind of maze-like, and we all fell apart into like maybe 15, 20 groups, and nobody knew where we were going anymore. And there were these red flag people you were supposed to be following. The red flags are the first ones into the building, and follow them, and you'll be okay. And where the hell were the red flag people? No one knew. And no one knew where we were going. We were just at Laney College, and now we're sitting. We've like spread out throughout Laney College. And there's police blocking the exits from Laney College. So we're like on campus, Laney College, not able to find a way out. These people cruise by on bicycles, and they're like, there's a way out over here, and the whole crowd starts following them. But then the red flag people show up, and they're like, no, we're going this way. So we all kind of converge in this lawn on Laney College. That's where there was this tree that I was kind of sitting under for a minute, and it had these seed pod things. And I picked up like maybe 10 of them. They were not the spiky little seed pods you might have seen online. They were closer to acorns, maybe more like chestnuts. I don't know what to call them. And I can't go back there because they have a restraining order against me. But they were seed pods. I picked up like maybe 10 of them. And I was nervous. At this point, we couldn't get out of this college. We were locked in. And it was not going to end well. And we all knew it. They'd already like beaten up people in front of us. And I go up to one of the exits where like there's a footbridge. There's a footbridge we can go over some water, or we can exit left by the tennis courts, or we can follow the bicycle people on the right hand side who say they can get us out of here, but nowhere near the building we're going to because we're supposed to be following the red flag people. So we just charge the cops by the tennis courts. And we're screaming, please go home, please go home. And I like climb up into some trees around the right hand side of the police line. And that's where I see the guy from Sprawl Plaza? Sprawl Hall?
Yeah, Sprawl Plaza.
It's the same Irish dude, O'Connor or whatever his name is. And he's like, what are you doing? Get away from this fence. And I'm like, what are you going to do? You and the fat sergeant can't make me get away from this fence. There was this really fat sergeant who was videotaping me. And I was like, fat sergeant couldn't jump over this fence to save his life. And I hadn't realized it was the same guy from Sprawl Plaza yet. You know, I'm still talking jive to cops. And I do that. I get really obnoxious to police officers. Very often. Whenever I'm around them, I am an asshole. Can't help it. They deserve it. He's like, listen, you're one of the reasonable ones. And he calls me by name again. He's like, Govinda, I've talked to you before. You're one of the reasonable ones. And I don't want to have to rip you over this fence. And I was like, I don't want you to rip me over this fence. And then he asks me about why I got all these nuts in my hand. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I got all these nuts in my hand. And then I run off back into the trees because I don't want to get ripped over any fences. Like, I'm really not trying to get arrested. And I go over the footbridge because that's where everybody seems to be going. And the cops just let us out that way, which is right past where they have us blocked at the tennis courts. Like, we just walk right around them into the other side of what turns out to be the building we're trying to get into. And there's a big fence there, and there's like maybe 10 riot cops. And we just gather there at the fence.
Can I ask you a question about the fence? Is this a police barricade? Is it a tennis court fence? Or is it a impromptu fence that the police have set up as a barricade?
I don't know if it was there before.
Okay.
It was a temporary type construction fence.
Okay.
I don't know if that building's under construction. I don't know if they put it up because they knew we were coming. There's like a chain link temporary style, like, we're doing construction here, stay out fence. And we ripped that fence down. I don't, but some people do. And they also ripped the fence down on the other side towards the lake where the construction zone is. And that's where the police start announcing, I'm Officer so-and-so from the City of Oakland, State of California, I'm a peace officer. This is an illegal gathering. You must disperse if you don't want to be arrested. And we don't go anywhere. We have the fence ripped down.
How many people are there?
Roughly, I want to say 1,000. I always want to say 1,000 that day. It always felt like 1,000, but it got really disjointed and it came together as a group again right there. And they gassed us. They gassed, like, to the left where I was standing. I was standing at the furthest right place where the fence went down. I was standing on the fence. And I had these seed things in my hand. And way off to my left, they threw a smoke grenade, which I assumed to be tear gas, because just all of a sudden gas started shooting up out of the crowd. And I just started letting these things fly. I think I shot 3 of them. And I shot it way down towards the people who I thought had just tear gassed the crowd. I wasn't shooting at the police who were 10 feet away from me.
When you say shooting?
I was throwing them with my hands. I was lobbing them. It wasn't like... It was something that I knew couldn't hurt them. Yeah, it was probably, looking back at it, a really stupid thing to be doing, because you don't shoot shit at riot police. Especially not small black objects that look like stones. But I didn't hit anybody. I wasn't aiming at anybody. I was covering about half the distance of the people that I would have been aiming at. But then it was brought to my attention by people standing behind me that the police were coming for me. And then I realized, that's when I first realized, oh, I'm standing out front shooting things at police officers. And I looked, and there were like 4 cops trying to chase, like, right at me. And I ran back into the crowd and just disappeared. I thought I just disappeared. And I ran back onto the construction site and did some other things that I hid in the construction site for a while. Until the march decided to move on. And we moved on to what I think was 12th Street and Oak. There was a...
Would you have had an option at that point to cut out and leave?
At that point, I had mad option to cut out and leave. There was no police presence to the north or to the west. at that point we were only surrounded on two sides, but I wasn't leaving for anything. And then they started pressing us from the people who had been at the Kaiser building, sort of wheeled around and chased us down 12th Street. And we, for the most part, turned down Oak. Some of us continued down 12th Street, and they all got arrested right away. And that's when the trap was set. They were on both sides of us again. And the president showed up down one block, losing track of directionality. Anyway, we were surrounded on all sides. And that's when the real fight started. Like, we had shield brigades, and it was so amazing. We had, like, drummer boys. We charged this line of riot cops. Not once, but like 3 or 4 times while they tear gassed us. We charged right into them, like 10 feet away, and just let them pelt away at us. I mooned them while they were shooting rubber bullets at us. And it was intoxicating. You get carried away in the moment. The whole thing, going back to November 2nd, it's such an adrenaline rush to fight with riot police. And I think it can be addictive. And I think some people involved in Occupy are getting addicted to just butting heads with the police and losing track of what we're actually there for. And I think that was probably me on that day, losing track of why I was there, because I'm not there to shoot anything at the police officers. As mad as I get, like, I had no right to be doing that. And I still think the punishment was a lot harsher than it should have been. Anyway, I left out something prior to January 28th. The Tuesday before that Saturday, I walked out of my house and there were 2 OPD cruisers sitting outside my house watching me walk to my car, and they pulled me over less than a half a block from my house and wrote me 3 tickets and said, "We will see you on Saturday."
What were the tickets for?
Running a stop sign I hadn't gone through yet. Stopping too abruptly when they pulled me over. Bullshit tickets. All dismissed by the judge when I challenged them. "Quote unquote, in the interest of justice, I am dismissing these tickets."
What was the 3rd ticket?
Oh, that one wasn't dismissed. That was a registration ticket. That was fair enough. Fair enough. The car wasn't registered. But that's not why they pulled me over. And they recognized me, and I recognized them from the Fuck the Police marches. And they said they'd see me Saturday.
And Saturday is January 28th.
And Saturday is January 28th, and that's the day they saw me.
Did you see those officers again that day?
I'm not sure. It wasn't the same guy I keep talking about. And in the articles I read online, they describe it as if it is the same guy. And I don't think it was. So anyway, they chase us a couple more blocks, and then I just get pulled out of the crowd. Like maybe 2 more blocks from there, they pull me out of the crowd. They say, "This one was throwing stones," and they grab me because I'm at the back again, protecting.
They said you were throwing stones?
Yeah, I was like right at the post office on 12th Street, and I was standing on a postal truck, and I jumped down in front of the riot police and tried to hold them off so people could get back to the plaza. And I got between 3 cops on accident. Like, they advanced faster than I was retreating, and I had one behind me and one on either side of me, and the one here shoved me into the other one's back, who turned around and looked like he was going to beat me silly. I said, "I'm sorry, he pushed me. Which way do you want me to go?" And one cop said this way, and the other cop said this way. And then a fourth cop came in and said, "He's under arrest. He was throwing stones." And then he marched me across the street to where the Irish guy was waiting for me. And he said, "Oh, no, they got you finally, huh? We finally got you. Even at all these protests, we haven't got any arrests on you, but now we got you." And they marched me over to a curb and sat me down with a bunch of other people. And they started laughing about how they were going to write down that I had assaulted them with a deadly weapon. And how I was going to state prison. There was no way out of it. And it was a joke to them. They were teasing me. Then it threw me on the paddy wagon and took me to jail. That's the end of January 28th on the outside.
So you went to jail in Oakland.
I did.
What can you talk about being locked up? What happened next?
All right, so we're waiting for the paddy wagon. There's sort of like this convergence point at some corner in Oakland where they're sitting us on curbs waiting for paddy wagons because they don't have enough for the amount of rests they're doing. It's already early in the day. Like, it's still early in the day, is what I meant. They're already running out of the means to get us to jail.
What time is this?
3-ish. I'm not positive about the time. Right at the beginning of the conflict. I was one of the first arrested, and yet they already didn't have the infrastructure to get us there. I was sitting on the curb next to a priest, a professional artist, this kid Mario, who has an open case, so I don't want to discuss it. But we got paddy wagon to North County Jail at 6th Street in downtown Oakland behind the courthouse. We didn't know where we were. We were left in the paddy wagon for some time because there were prisoners ahead of us to be processed. They brought us inside. It was like this garage. And there was a gate, and then they walked us through the gate, and they handed us a bologna sandwich and made us take a picture with it. So we couldn't say that we weren't fed, because we weren't fed for another 24 hours after that. But they wanted to have pictures of us with food. So we all got bologna sandwiches, and we were let into holding cells, which were awful. It was not awful, but awful.
Awful.
Yes, awful. Which then became awful because they were all full. Like, we didn't have room to lay down, and the day was progressing. There was one phone, and we would call the National Lawyers Guild. We all had there's a hotline number we write on our bodies in case we end up in jail. And we would make our one collect call to them, and then we would pass it around the room, and there'd be 16 or 17 of us in the room. And you're just sitting there, and I don't know, I guess the first night spirits are kind of high. You've all just been arrested for protesting, and it's not the end of the world. And I still don't understand that I'm not going home with everybody else. You know, like, we're going home tomorrow. I'm starting to get like ominous feelings because everybody else is getting charged with failure to disperse from the scene of a riot or other minor things. Whereas when I was getting fingerprinted, I asked what I'm being charged with, and he said assault with a deadly weapon against a police officer. You should know that. You assaulted him. Um, so I kind of knew I was different, and I was keeping my mouth shut about how I was different, but I kind of also thought like maybe I wasn't different and they were just trying to scare me. So I kind of thought I was going home when I took that picture that you see on the internet. I kind of thought that was my one night in jail. And yeah, our spirits were high. We were playing games. We were some guy knew like those stupid word mystery games where he'd like tell you a scenario and you had to ask questions about how the person died. I don't know if you guys understand. Like stupid logic games. We were playing in jail with this priest and this South American dude and this kid Mario. It was really cold though. It was like the air conditioning was on. There was no blankets and there was no way to lay down. And then eventually they came for me and singled me out. And they started asking me like the housing interview questions. And that's when I realized that I wasn't going home. And they moved me in my own holding cell. It's probably like 4 a.m. And I'm just sitting there, and then they bring me my prison clothes. It's like, oh, or my jail clothes, sorry, I guess it's not prison. But they take my clothes away and put me in flip-flops and a bright red suit. And I'm like, oh, I'm really not going home. And then in the morning, you watch like all your friends who you spent the whole day with all getting marched down the hall a couple at a time to be released. You realize you're not getting released. It's one of the worst feelings on earth to be left there. Especially, my dog was in my backyard and my cat was locked up in my house. And no one had spare keys to my house. And I didn't have my cell phone. I didn't have any phone numbers memorized. I don't know anybody's phone number. Because cell phones have robbed me of that. And they don't give you, like, the white pages when you're in jail, so you better remember someone's phone number. So I had no way to, like, contact anybody, work, anything. I was just sitting in jail, hoping someone noticed I was missing. And hoping they would put 2 and 2 together and go and save my pets' lives. And that was an experience. Like, all of a sudden, you are out of control. They're going to keep your ass as long as they want you. And your pets are about to starve to death. And that's as close as I've ever been to having kids. I don't know, I felt like a really bad dad. Like, why didn't I have a backup plan in case I got arrested? Why doesn't someone have a spare key to my house? And why can't I even figure out how to contact my family? It took 5 days for me to get in contact with anybody. And the entire time I was in solitary confinement with nothing to read, just the 4 walls and a little lunch slot that the food trays would be passed through, and the officers weren't speaking to you when they came and passed the food through. So you're just in a windowless room with absolutely nothing. You can't write, you can't read. And it goes by so fucking slow. Like, one day in there lasts a year. And I think it was Monday night, maybe 48 hours in, an NLG lawyer showed up to visit me. 48 hours in feels like an eternity. That first week is forever. Because you have nothing. There's just... It's like if you went and sat in your closet for a week. So 2 days in, a lawyer shows up but she's so non-committal. She's like, well, who can I contact on your behalf? I'm not saying I'm going to contact this person. You know, worst comes to worst, you're no more fucked than you already are. Best case scenario, maybe I contact someone for you, but I'm so busy that you might be shit out of luck. That was her basic attitude. And so I like tell her my story, and I'm like begging her to find someone to go feed my pets. And she's being like, well, worst comes to worst, you were already in trouble. No one was coming to save you. We'll see what we can do. But then she got in touch with my family. But it was scary. I didn't know. And then I finally got a letter from my mother. And that's how I got her phone number. No, that's how I got everybody else's phone number. I got the letter from my lawyer with my mother's phone number on Tuesday, which is like 3 days in jail. Called her on the 4th day and found out she couldn't get collect calls. Had to wait for her to set up so she could get collect calls. And then you feel like such an asshole. You're sitting in jail. And all you want to do, once every 48 hours, you get buzzed out into a hallway for 1 hour, and you can take a shower in that hallway, or you can watch TV in that hallway, or you can make collect calls, or you can access a book cart if the deputy is feeling nice enough to push it towards you. But that isn't all the time. And you like call your mom, and it's the best thing on earth. You're like talking to your mom, and then she starts talking about how like 10 minutes talking to you is costing like $25, and they can't afford it. They're spending their rent money just to talk to you. And so you start feeling guilty, like you don't want to call anybody. And yet, it's going to be the only time you contact someone for 48 hours. It's your only human contact, so like you really want to call. I don't know, I'm gotten way ahead of in the questioning.
How did you spend your time in the room when you weren't in the hallway?
My first 3 days, I analyzed all the scratches on the walls and made pictures out of them. And I imagined things. And then I would do jumping jacks. I would do 5,000 jumping jacks every day. Because it was something to do, and you could count while you were doing it. Past time. I ended up doing so many jumping jacks that I couldn't walk when I got out of jail. I had to be put on Vicodin for a month. But, yeah, I would do push-ups and pull-ups. Sort of fake pull-ups. Because there wasn't like a bar. There was a top bunk. But it was empty because it was solitary. What else did I do? Once I like got access to books, and once I got a commissary fund, which took like 10 days. Then I had stamps, and I could write letters, and people were sending me books. I read Martin Luther King's autobiography. I read a lot of books. I read this zombie book called The Reapers Are the Angels by Alden Bell. I read a bunch of Tom Clancy novels. I read the Bhagavad Gita, which is sort of a Hindu sacred poem. I read and I wrote letters. And that's all you could do, and exercised. Those are your 3 options.
How long were you in solitary confinement?
25 days. But the first, like, 3 or 4 days is the worst. I mean, it always is gonna suck to be locked in a room. You're always gonna want to be on the other side, not locked in a room. But once you have stuff to distract you, and you have food and stuff, you can get by. It's when you don't have anything, it's when you're entirely devoid of anything to distract you that it's absolute torture. Once I had books, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I still thought about killing myself every day. But I could, like, do it, you know, I could, like, be strong for the people I knew and write them letters telling them, oh, my spirits are transcending these walls, don't worry. But it's bullshit, you just don't want them worrying about you. In reality, you're screaming, what the fuck? I'm trapped in here, and all I did is throw a little acorn at a stupid fucking cop. And you're just going over it, over and over and over in your head, like, how could I have been so stupid? I saw them coming for me. They knew who I was. It's so obvious they knew who I was. Like, how could I be so stupid I didn't just run home? But then I was thinking, oh, but if I ran home, they would have just arrested me because they know where I live. Like, you just spend 25 days thinking, how could I redo this moment so my ass ain't in jail?
Have you thought of yourself as a political prisoner? Or did you think about it then?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's like 2 ways you can spin it. And when I was spinning it like I was a political prisoner, is when it felt worthwhile. Felt like what I did. Reading Martin Luther King's autobiography helped with that. Like, what I did is worthwhile, and I'm doing it for everybody. And it's a sacrifice I'm making. But you feel so incredibly alone because you're not hearing about the people outside writing articles about you. And no one can tell you about that because you have an open case and you can't discuss that shit over the telephone. I felt like everybody had forgotten me and everything I had done was in vain. And that really I was just a stupid guy who shot a seed pod at a cop. And now I was going to prison. And that's how I felt the entire time. For the majority of the entire time. And at other times I was like, no, I'm a political prisoner and people are here for me. And I heard a couple of the marches. Like, I heard them come to the jail. And every time they came to the jail, I was denied my 1 hour out. But I still felt really good. Like, I felt like when you're sitting in something that real and that scary, to realize there's people on the outside fighting for you is the only thing that keeps you going. It was the only times I felt like they hadn't forgotten who the fuck I was, because no one could tell me, like, no one was visiting me. My mom came twice. But that wasn't even comfort, because you're in such a tight spot. You're trying to console your mother and be like, it's not such a tight spot. Look, I'm having fun here. But no, it's a real fucking tight spot. To be sitting in solitary confinement and knowing that when they come to take you, after your full cavity search, you're going right back in that cell. And yeah, it's not a friendly place to be.
So, I should note that this conversation is happening at nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. And that's because it's been really hard to find a day that you're not in court with lawyers and all of that. So can you talk about the legal, about getting out for one thing, and then the legal aftermath of your arrest and kind of what you expect from here?
Yeah. Well, allow me to say, court is the worst thing when you're in jail. It's the best thing because every court date is one court date closer to you getting released. Yet you can never sleep the night before, so you're always up staring at the walls, ripping your hair out. The judge is going to decide your life the next morning. And they come and get you at 7. And they put you in irons because you're a dangerous criminal. So my hands are shackled to my waists. And you're marched to the court where you're held in a holding cell with no books or anything. You're taken at like 7 in the morning, and court might be at 3 in the afternoon. And you're not fed. You're just held in this cell where you can't even sit down because of the chains they have you in. And then you're marched out into court, and you're held in a glass box, a bulletproof box, and you can't even see your lawyer. And the judge doesn't even look up at you. And I had no idea I was getting out of jail when I did. My lawyer came to the interview room and was like, the DA says no deal, we're taking this to trial, you're going to prison. And I said, okay, let's take this trial. And then they made the deal right in front of me without talking to me about it. My lawyer already knew what I was willing to accept, so he just accepted it on my behalf. I didn't know what was going on, and suddenly the judge is like, all right, we're freeing you today, time served, $250 fine. What had happened is my lawyer had shown the DA what I had actually thrown, given him one, sent him home with it. The DA took the time supposedly to talk to the police and be like, did anybody get hit? Do we know it's a rock? Could it be this thing? The jury's going to eat us alive if we try to prosecute this kid and we don't know it's a rock. Did someone pick the rock up? The cops had nothing. We plea bargained to a misdemeanor assault on a police officer.
What were the original charges?
I had 8 felony assault with a police officer with a deadly weapon.
How?
Because there were 8 police who all felt threatened. But the 8 police all had the name John Doe. So there were no police who actually felt threatened, and no one you could call the stand to be like, did he throw something at you? Because the guys I was throwing it at never even saw it coming because it didn't even make it halfway there. But they wrote it up 8 times as 8 different police because they could, because that's a tactic they are using so the DA can charge a higher bail to make you sit in jail so you will accept the plea bargain, which I did.
What was your bail?
$400,000.
Why?
Because each charge carried a $50,000 bail, and I had 8 charges. So if someone wanted to get me out, they would have to forfeit $40,000, which would not be payable back.
400,000.
No, you can bond them out for 40,000.
10%.
10%, but you don't get it back. And no one can afford to lose 40,000 to get you out of jail, unless you're rich, and then you wouldn't be in Occupy. So I mean, that was their tactic, and I accepted the plea bargain, which was a misdemeanor assault on a police officer with
Single misdemeanor?
Single 1 misdemeanor. They dropped the wearing the mask. They gave me a wearing a mask misdemeanor as well. Because while they were tear gassing me, I put that bandana over my mouth. But I got a single misdemeanor. I'm on probation for 3 years. My lawyer says not to go into Oakland no matter what. Because there will be repercussions. I now have a police record for attacking a police officer, and they already know who I am. So I moved out of Oakland. And I've been homeless since I got out of jail. Well, I lost the apartment anyway. My brother took my dog. My mom has my cat. My mom threw about 90% of what I own in the garbage because she had to close my apartment out for me. The way I'm in court now is not related to me. I'm there in support of other people. My deals with the courts are over. All my tickets, the tickets from that day with the police officers were dismissed. My arrests, my felonies were all plea bargained to one misdemeanor. I have probation for 3 years. And it isn't a check-in probation. I just cannot be rearrested. Which is their tactic, because if I take part in another public protest, they can arrest me for that and hold me. Even if they don't charge me, it'll still be a violation of my probation to have been arrested at a protest, which will allow them to jail me for further amounts of time. So I'm still very active in Occupy Oakland, more so now than ever. I have joined the Anti-Repression Committee, which works with court support, which is why I'm in court all the time. And it's not all the time. It should be all the time. I have a lot of trouble waking up. And court is at 9 in the morning. And you gotta wait there till like maybe 1 in the afternoon. But yeah, I go to court and support people who have trials. And I'm at as many as I can be, sitting in the audience in red, because we wear red to court, so that the judge knows that that's Occupy Oakland. We always wear red. And what else am I doing? I'm in the foreclosure defense group, and we're actually doing really good. We've saved 2 people's houses.
How?
Interrupting the initial auctions, and then flooding the bank that holds the loan with phone calls so that their offices can't operate until they back down to the fact that Occupy Oakland intends for them to renegotiate with this single person. And in both cases, they have renegotiated the loan, and we've saved the people's houses. And we have more cases coming up, like that's one of the new battlegrounds. We're taking the banks on one foreclosure at a time. And we're winning. We have a 100% record at beating them. What else am I doing? I'm anti-repression. I write letters to everybody in jail. I'm pen pals with every jailed occupier in Oakland.
How many are there?
5 right now. 5. I want to say 5 after these 2 get out. It might be 4 after these 2 get out.
The 2 that are supposed to be released tomorrow.
Yeah. Or in the next week. There's Momo getting out tomorrow, who was supposed to be released 3 weeks ago. There's Truth getting out tomorrow, who was arrested at the general strike in November. But we still have Cameron Rose in jail. He was arrested on December 30th. We have the Ice Cream 3, who were accused of committing a hate crime against a lesbian. That's a confusing scenario. I don't want to speak about that. I don't know. They're accused of attacking a lesbian in downtown, and it's all trumped up. There's I don't remember all the names off the top of my head. I think there's 5 left after these 2 get released.
So there seems to be, from the outside, despite the actions that you're talking about, less news about Occupy. Why do you think that is?
Well, we're not fighting with the police that much anymore. Thank God. And I think that's the only thing they want to focus on is when we're fighting with them. What we've been doing is every Saturday we hold a barbecue in a park in some neighborhood in poor parts of Oakland. We feed the entire neighborhood, and we've been getting huge turnouts, like 200-300 people. We set up an encampment in a park for a day, have a giant barbecue, so much food you can't stand it. And then, I don't know, but that's not newsworthy, we're just out there feeding people and spreading the word. And there's more newsworthy stuff to come. There really is. But right now what we're doing is building our base. We're participating in the Anarchist Book Fair in San Francisco this weekend. We are saving people's houses one at a time. I don't want to discuss where, but there are several occupied buildings that aren't being looked at right now, that aren't being raided, but are illegally occupied by us. Not by me in particular, but we do have control of several properties that we are not disclosing the locations of. We have a central off-street meeting area called the Holdout, which is working in conjunction with us, which is an actual rental property that's been rented where we hold meetings off-street. It's on San Pablo in West Oakland. It's where a lot of our planning goes on, and the front room of it is an anarchist bookstore. Yeah, we have stuff coming up. We are participating in May Day, and all of our focus is on that, except for a few side things. So,
you're talking about the nationwide day of action that's planned for May Day on May 1st. So, if Occupy heats up, or when Occupy heats up in Oakland again, will you get involved again? Can you be involved again? In what capacity do you see yourself being involved?
I'm trying really hard to stay away from getting arrested again. May 1st is the first day I'll be risking arrest again. I will definitely be at the march. We're meeting at Fruitvale Bart. I won't be violating my stay-away orders. I have stay-away orders from Frank Ogawa Plaza. I can't be within 300 yards. Or from the Kaiser Building, 300 yards, which only leaves a very narrow strip of downtown Oakland I can walk through. But we're starting at Fruitvale Bart, and we have a permit for that half of the march, so I'm going to be in it. I think that half of the march ends good. And that's the half I'm going to participate in. There may be things after that half, and I may not participate in. But I'm not too sure.
Do you think that it's possible that May 1st could feel again for you the way that November 2nd did?
God, I hope so. God, I really would hope so. It's going to be either tainted or elevated, and I'm not sure. It's either going to be like, God, it sucks, I can't participate the way I want to. Because they are going to focus on the plaza, and I'm not going to be able to follow the group. There's going to be things I can't do. There's going to be things I'm not willing to do. There are other people violating their stay-away orders. I don't want to go to prison. And I'm not trying to be anybody's martyr. I'm hoping we get such a massive turnout that the police can't touch us. Because otherwise, they're going to just crush us again. And then it's going to feel like January 28th, and I'm going to be so angry again. And I'm not having any... There's going to be nothing I can do with that anger. Because I can't confront the police anymore. I can't do it. They are not fucking around with me. So it's either going to be another really great victory day, or it's going to be another January 28th where they come at us right away. What I'm worried is we're going to have that half of the march that we have the permit for, and then the police will wait for us there, tell us to disperse. And, I mean, we're building new shield brigades. There's going to be another fight. I'm hoping there isn't. But how could there not, you know? They're not going to let us win.
That's it.